Welcome back to the LEC studio. Game 1 went very much in favor of Origen in our regional gauntlet round 1. 1-0 up they are, and we are in a best of 5, of course, so Splyce have a couple of opportunities to strike back, but I'm sure they will want to do it much sooner rather than later.
A reminder, what is on the line? They need, both teams need to win this best of 5, and then they need to play another best of 5 tomorrow, and the winner of that will go on as Europe's... Wait, then we'll go to Worlds. I completely forgot how gauntlet works. Yeah. Then they have to play Fnatic in the final round to determine what seed they will go to Worlds in, which means that there is a possibility that either one of these teams could actually be the second seed at World for Europe if they can find some kind of surprise win against Fnatic. But that's a long way away. We're going to be jumping into Game 2. Splyce versus Origen. We're seeing the same bans from the previous game. Of course, Splyce is now on the blue side. Draven Yuumi going to be taken off the board.
Yes, so Splyce banning the Yuumi out here, where it was Origen that banned that before. Seems to be a blue side ban.
I see.
The Draven was removed by Splyce. So they also took away Aatrox and Akali. So maybe going to leave one of those open as they do have first pick with the Akali banned away.
Aatrox first pick then, probably.
Oh, it's Gragas.
So in Europe, we've seen a really high priority on Gragas.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, he's a popular champion. He's pretty strong. I think that he does well into a lot of jungle matchups. He has early game presence. He scales well into the late game. He also offers AP damage. Like, I get it. I'm just surprised because anywhere else in the world, Gragas would definitely not be a first pick. So already building some excitement as we move into Worlds and the different meta variations. Because, of course, the Aatrox is left up and available, along with the Kai'Sa. Yep. Which means that those are going to be instant lock-ins for Origen. Now, if Splyce are feeling confident, they could do the run back, and they could do what Origen did to them. And they could go Tristana, well, it was initially a bait with the Nautilus, but I think Tristana and Nautilus is a very strong duo into the likes of a Kai'Sa. I
concur. The Gangplank is available as well, which is what Xerxe is currently hovering.
I like this. I do like this from Splyce, putting a little bit more focus on the GP. We really didn't get to see it at all in the finals. It was banned away a lot, but I do think the Gangplank is a very strong champion right now, and he does very well into the likes of an Aatrox because of how well he can scale. He's very safe in lane. I do think that there are possibilities to dive the likes of Gangplank, but you do need strong setup in order to do that. So we'll see if Origen look to do something similar.
It looks like Norskeren is going to be following in the footsteps of Mithy and Hylissang with the Thresh lock-in. It's something he's played in the past, of course, but we saw it a lot. And there is the Nautilus once again from the side of Origen.
How much has he played it this
year? Would you like me to find out for you? If you could keep talking for a second.
All right, well,
he hasn't.
Oh, he hasn't. So this is his first time this split. Yeah, because I was thinking when I think of Norskeren, that Thresh is not the champion that comes to mind for me.
He's definitely played it in the past.
Of course, yeah.
Maybe in solo queue.
What I mean by that is, he's much more of the like Brauns, the Nautiluses, Alistairs. You know, he's like that frontline kind of peel, engage kind of support player, right? So by playing a little bit more skill-intensive support, you need to land those hooks, you need to be in the right place. Positioning is very important. We'll see how he does perform on it. And we do actually now see, I like this ban from Origen, the Tristana being taken away. Don't allow that into Kobbe's hands. A very well-known Tristana player, especially given that it is quite strong into the Kai'Sa.
So the expectation with a Thresh is usually you play a more aggressive bottom lane. Seems like it's going to be quite hard to do into a Nautilus because he's a very strong front line. And there aren't that many strong AD carries left as well.
Lucian is the only one I think Origen could actually ban that now if they wanted to, and then you really would limit the pool.
Hey, Betty! High five!
So good at this. So good at League of Legends. Anyway, with the LeBlanc now banned on the side of Splyce, they're looking to ban away... Well, actually, they have quite a few options. They could just ban away other strong mid laners, but the pool has already been fairly narrowed out. So they're going to go for the Skarner. Okay. No, I can see that. We've really not seen a huge amount of Skara.
We haven't seen any of Skara.
No, not Skara.
Playing TFT.
We've seen very little Skarner in the LEC playoffs, and it's often something that's actually banned away in the second phase. I feel like it's something that's been played a lot in scrims and does quite well into the likes of a Gragas, and it does make sense. But very rarely are we actually going to get the opportunity to see it on stage, so instead Zanzarah is going to be going on to his famous Sejuani, very well-known Sejuani player within the ERL scene. I don't know if anyone is able to see some of the highlight video that we released, but he predicted a Sejuani ultimate onto someone that flashed and jumped away on something like an Ezreal or Corki. But yeah, really good at landing those ultis.
Okay, this is a Kobbe classic. Bringing out the Vayne, hasn't played it this split, but I remember him playing it, I believe, in playoffs of spring. He's very good at it.
So The thing about Vayne is, yes, she does outscale a Kai'Sa, and in theory, Kai'Sa doesn't have any kill threat on you, so you don't have to be too worried about that. One of the things you do have to be worried about, however, is the fact that there is so much lockdown on the side of Origen that I feel like it's going to be very difficult for a short-range AD carry like Vayne to be able to play these fights effectively. Now, admittedly, Splyce's composition scales very well. Corki, Gangplank, Gragas, Vayne, very, very strong scaling. However, I do believe that their ability to initiate is not super strong. They don't have a huge amount of crowd control in this composition either, and I feel like Origen's ability to just dive onto the Vayne should be relatively easy with the likes of the Nautilus. You have plenty of disengage with the likes of the Syndra as well. The Aatrox follow-up as well is exceptionally strong. So I'm leaning a little bit more towards Origen's draft, just because of the bot lane that Splyce has drafted for themselves. And I feel like that it is very easy for Splyce to be able to attack this bot lane as well. So I just feel like Origen have a lot more early game options.
I understand that.
But again, in terms of scaling, I think Splyce have more scaling options than they did before. But even then, when I think of like late game team fights, I value crowd control a lot. I think it's really important, especially if you have like a front line that your AD carries can play around. When you're running double AD carry, the fact that they can only really play around the Thresh and the Gragas, I think will make team fighting harder for Splyce. But again, they do have a lot of scaling, they have a lot of damage. If they just have the freedom to hit the front line, that front line will just melt. So I'm quite excited to see how these team fights play out.
So am I. I think Kobbe is traditionally an AD carry that plays team fights incredibly well, and he is 6-0 on Vayne in LEC history, so I'm sure he's played against crowd control before, and maybe he knows the way to deal with it. But as you say, Origen have a very strong composition to lock down that Vayne as and when they can, and I just sneezed, so I apologize.
Wait, is that what that was?
Well, it was
the way they can!
I was trying to hold in the sneeze and couldn't get to my cough button
Enthusiastic medic!
because my cough button was too far away.
You're ready for game 2!
Okay, you take us in.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen! It's Splyce versus Origen. Both these teams fighting for a spot at Worlds. The last time that we could see them for the rest of 2019. Or it could be an opportunity for them to make a name for themselves on the international stage. Last year, G2 went through the gauntlet. They made a big upset by defeating Sjokz, and then they made it all the way to the semifinals. Many years ago, Origen also had to qualify through the gauntlet, and they went on to impress and making it to the semifinals back in 2015 as well.
SKT 0-3 in those semifinals.
Yeah, we don't remember that. That was a painful series to watch. But yeah, the gauntlet always brings some interesting players. So we're going to be jumping into game 2. We already talked a lot about why I'm a little skeptical and a little worried about this Vayne Thresh. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Always love it when I am. Opportunity to learn some new stuff. But in terms of early game playmaking, I think trying to gank for a Gangplank and a Corki is difficult, right?
Definitely
Which means that when you're looking at places to gank, then you'd kind of edge towards the bot side of the map. Now, I feel like Vayne's early game damage doesn't really offer a lot. She doesn't have like a number of abilities. She's very auto attack reliant, which means that a lot of the damage kind of has to come from the Gragas, and then you're hoping for the Vayne to like clean up maybe at the end of the fight. But basically, I feel if Splyce is going to look for any plays, then the bot side of the map is where they look to play around. Whereas for Origen, they can actually play around any lane that they want. Aatrox with Sejuani, very strong 2 versus 2. If they stack up a wave, they can set up a dive onto the Gangplank. Nukeduck on the Syndra. EQ, very easy to land. And when you have follow-up from a Sejuani as well, it's very easy to gank that lane too. And then you look at the bot lane, you have a Nautilus. So I feel like Origen have like a number of options. Zanzarah can go pretty much wherever he wants, depending on what they want to where they want to play through in the early game. If I was Origen, I would consider trying to put more pressure on trying to get the Gangplank behind, largely because I think one of the things that Gangplank does provide is that ulti, which can contribute to the other side of the map. So maybe early game, Zanzarah will look to try and burn some of the spells bot, but as we can see from his pathing, he's actually started on his blue and is pathing up towards the top side, and he's going to do his blue into red into Krugs. This will give him level 3, which means that he could look for an early gank towards the top side of the map, while Xerxe does a full clear bot. Now, if we quickly have a look at the wave, we can see it where it is stacking up in the top lane. So you can see that it's slowly pushing towards Alphari as well. So this makes it even easier and an even juicier target. So Vizicsacsi should look toward, and already, as I'm saying, he throws it down. So he is expecting a potential gank, and Xerxe pathing up towards the bot side, not looking to reset to pick up early boots. but Zanzarah is going to clear out this ward, and they're going to go for the gank anyway.
Gonna look for it. Alphari has just used the Infernal Chains. Sjokz with an early flash away, and Zanzarah and Alphari will be very happy getting that Summoner spell out early on.
So early game goes very much as we expect. Early gank comes down from Origen up towards the top side of the map. Now, because Origen also have push in the mid lane and the top lane, Zanzarah has the opportunity to go for an invade. He gets some information on Xerxe, and now, because Origen know where Xerxe is, Patrik and Mithy can look to push in their lane and play more aggressive. You can already see them go for a bit of an early trade. Trading against the Vayne early on, especially with the likes of a Kai'Sa, usually trades will go in your favor because her dueling prowess at early levels is not the strongest.
Xerxe decided not to do the Gromp, stayed around this top side as Zanzarah was clearing out the Scuttle Crab. Now Zanzarah should know. Oh, doesn't actually spot Xerxe.
But they spotted the cone being cleared out, so they will have information on
where he is, yeah. I agree with you, Vedius.
So I had to burp, so I muted.
Flash away from Alphari. You didn't actually have to tell us that. The sneeze came across on the microphone, the burp did not. Do you want a fun fact about Vizicsacsi?
Yeah, hit me.
That I realized really isn't that fun. So I was doing some research on Sjokz and looking at how many times he's been in the Gauntlet and how many times he's made it to Worlds. This guy has been in every single regional Gauntlet we've had. They started in 2015, we're now in 2019.
Wow.
He has placed second 3 times, and he has placed third once. He has never been to Worlds.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
He's a veteran as well. He's like one of our oldest players that actually hasn't been able to qualify for Worlds. I know a lot of Vizicsacsi fans would really, really like to see him, but you can see a lot of young players on the side of Splice. At the beginning of the year, something we talked at length about was a bit of a trade in bot lane, as we do see Xerxe joining the fray.
Mithy's just going to flash away from this. He should be fine to get away. Teleport coming in, but that's just towards the mid lane for Humanoid, and Splice forced the Origen bot lane back.
So as we were saying, a lot of players on the side of Splice never really had the opportunity, or haven't yet had the opportunity to qualify for Worlds and give it a go, whereas Origen was actually stacked with talent that has been to Worlds a number of times. Cold, of course, was one of those players that back in 2016 did go alongside Splice and Kobbe even. But Nukeduck, he went all the way back in 2013.
Yeah, the Lemon Dog Zero.
Mithy has gone with G2 and with Origen, and Alphari went with Misfits. And when we think about some of these players and what they achieved, like Nukeduck was the first player to go up against OG FLICKR. He played Swain into, I think it was FLICKR's Ahri. Didn't go too well. No. We also saw Alphari playing up against SKT, where he took the team to all 5 games. Mithy making semifinals in 2015. Unfortunately, unable to get out of groups really with the side of G2.
Yeah, it didn't go too well.
But in terms of world pedigree, Origen is stacked with talent. And expectations are that I think it's one of those debates around who would you want to see at Worlds, and I think a lot of fans edge towards Origen just because of how proven a lot of these players are on an international stage, whereas for Splice, there's still a lot of young talent that it does often feel like that same faith isn't there.
While we've been chatting about the World's legacy of some of these players, Zanzarah has come up towards the top side. Sjokz still a quarter of the cooldown of his flash left up. He has just hit level 6, but he doesn't really have too much mana. Alphari's going forward. Lands the Darkin Blade, and it looks like this Sjokz is just going to pop the Cannon Barrage, clear out the wave.
Nice.
That's a very intelligent play there.
Yeah, he hasn't based yet, and he noticed that Alphari just has, so he's choosing to reset. And a good utilization of the ultimate means that the wave won't freeze underneath the tower, unless Alphari just tanks the wave, which of course he could do, but both teams posturing around the Drake right now. Oh, actually, if we quickly cut to the top side of the map, you will notice that a bit of a freeze is being set up. So Alphari has got the waves just outside of tower range, so these minions on his side will slowly be killed, and it'll force Vizicsacsi to overextend to clear this wave, which sets up the opportunity for a gank.
No Cannon Barrage, as here comes Zanzarah. Vizicsacsi's going to be caught out. Pops the oranges a little bit too early, and that's first blood once again for Origen.
Great setup from the side of Origen, and just good decision-making there from Alphari, creating the freeze to force Vizicsacsi to overextend. Vizicsacsi also used the teleport, which means that Alphari doesn't need to freeze anymore. He can now just push this wave out, and then he can look to base, spend his gold, and he can either choose to TP back up towards the top lane, or he can hold onto it. It's up to him, but good early play from Origen.
Zanzarah once again showing that he can be in the right place at the right time, setting up well with his top laner. Splice trying to get a bit of control down towards this bottom side, but Xerxe was on a ward. Obviously, Oracle's a little bit too late and won't spot the fact that that was the case. Meanwhile, Nukeduck is being gifted over his blue buff.
Now notice that the junglers have a bit of a CS discrepancy. The reason why that's happened is that Zanzarah's shifted and created a bit of an awkward path for himself because he went up to catch the second spawning of his Krogs to then allow the gank top lane to happen. So it ends up working out for his laners, but obviously it's cost him a lot of farm. So you'll notice that his red buff is still up, he's now losing his Raptors to the Corki, and so he still hasn't quite hit level 6 yet, but it's that sacrifice that he's made an adaptation in his pathing in order to provide more support for his team.
Kobbe just teleported back into this bottom lane. Zanzarah was on a ward. He's popped a control to clear that one away. And now perhaps just looking to get Patrik and Mithy up towards these plates, make it so that Splyce cannot freeze that lane. Patrik has already burnt his teleport, so it looks like Origen just wanted a back timer for their bot lane, and Zanzarah was happy to oblige.
Notice once again, Alphari is setting up a freeze himself. He doesn't have the flash available, so with the wave in this state, he's a very happy man. Of course, there is the risk of a dive, but with the information that Origen have, the likelihood of Xerxe being around the bot side of his map to clear his red buff means that Alphari should be relatively safe. And you can see that he does have the ward there, but it is being control warded out by the side of that ward placed by Vizicsacsi. So right now, the map state very comfortable for Origen. If we look at some of the farm that's coming across on both sides, pretty even in the mid lane. Slight advantage for Patrik, but that should close as Kobbe catches this wave. Somewhat as you'd expect in terms of the 2v2 down bot. Vayne, not the strongest laner. I hear a lot of people talk about how Syndra is a good matchup and counter in many ways to the Corki. I think that's largely because you actually have the ability to set up ganks onto the Corki, which is very difficult in pretty much every other matchup. But I don't think that you just crush it in lane, because I think Corki is also just, in general, a very safe laner.
Zanzarah spending a little bit more time up towards Chachi's lane. Their flash is available for the Gangplank, and Xerxe is waiting just around the corner at his wolves. So if Origen had gone for anything a little bit too greedy there, they would have been caught out pretty rapidly. But now, perhaps Alphari and Zanzarah coming towards the mid. You talked about gank setup. Well, Origen were looking for something, unable to find it as of yet. And it's an Origen Splyce game. We have 1 kill, 10 minutes in. It's a slight gold lead for Splyce, but Zanzarah has been in the right place at the right time for his laners.
I know it's sensible to run TP on Syndra, but it's never my preferred route.
Yeah, I mean, you play Nocturne mid, so...
I just feel like Syndra has so much kill pressure, you know? Like
Does she not have kill pressure without Ignite?
I mean, she does,
yeah,
but you have more kill pressure.
More kill
you know
pressure.
what I mean? Like, the option to set a person on fire.
Too much of a good thing is bad for you, Vedius.
All right, anyway, it makes sense. It's sensible.
Sure.
I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying it's a preference thing, you know? You're playing for the team, or are you playing for yourself?
I'm going to say, in the regional gauntlet for the LEC, where your team could qualify for Worlds, you play for the team.
All right, fine.
That's why you've never been picked up by an LEC team. Even though you're good enough.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Not because one ban would mess you up. Hey, you're better than me. They didn't even have to ban my Sejuani. They just stole it in revival.
All right, so now we see a bit of a swap coming out from Splyce. They don't care too much about the Cloud Drake, so they're proactive in terms of the swap because they have their duo up towards the top side of the map first, and they've been able to get push in mid. They should be able to secure this objective relatively uncontested, unless Zanzarah wants to come in for a cheeky steal. Now, Sejuani is one of the safer ones to dive into the back of the pit because you have the flash. Well, flash is currently on cooldown, but you do have the dash as well. Looks like because the rest of his laners aren't around.
No, he's going. And now he's going away.
All right. So he's going to disengage from that. You can see the level difference starting to accumulate now, though. Zanzarah's pathing hasn't been super optimal. He hasn't been able to pick up all of his camps. Some have been stolen away. Whereas for Xerxe, he's actually been securing pretty much all of his camps. And while he hasn't made a lot of ganks happen, he's built a solid lead up for himself. So
Mithy's actually only just backed from the bottom lane, which means this is going to be a 3v2 for a little while. Humanoid coming up as well. Doesn't have the package. He's wiggling his little Corki up towards that top lane. Riptide would charge in. That's 2 plates to Splyce, and it looks like they're happy enough just getting 320 gold.
Okay, so not much going to help enough the back of that.
We're too used to Fnatic G2 Vedius.
Well, I mean,
fights.
So it's one of those situations where, in that, okay, so Rift Tower just goes down. Normally, when that play happens, it's because a cross-map play is happening. Mithy tries to go all in. Zanzarah was spotted. So what I mean by that is, normally, when you swap that early and you're conceding a Drake, it's because you recognize you can't really defend your bot tower anymore, so the plates or the tower is being sieged on, so you then make the swap up to top lane to secure Herald, and you can then trade the plates on the other side of the map, and maybe even secure the tower first because you have Rift Herald. But because Splyce reset just as Patrik and Mithy were pushing in a wave, they effectively swapped at a very similar time.
Yeah.
So Origen just kind of matched them. So in terms of the overall plate gold, like sure they get 2 plates, but Alphari will now pick up 1 for himself. He's also secured 1 for himself in the top side of the map. So like things are very even, and it hasn't really resulted in a huge net gain. So the laning phase is just gonna keep going. Yeah. Which is like ultimately fine for Splyce. Again, like they have strong scaling options. I'm curious to see how their team fighting will work out because as I mentioned, I don't think they have a huge amount of crowd control in their kit. We do see a bit of trading though.
Kobbe going forward, has to flash away from the Infernal Chains. Norskeren was there with the Lantern, but Nukeduck and Zanzarah were looking hungrily at that Vayne.
So Origen actually sent Patrik to the mid lane. And Mithy to push out that wave. Looks like they're not going to continue sieging onto that, but it meant that there was nobody up towards top side because Nukeduck ended up roaming down bot to assist with the counter. So while they do get the flash out from Kobbe, oh, here we go, TP coming in.
Yeah, Chachi's been a bit greedy here. Mithy's on his way up as well. Chachi's just going to look for 1 more plate before he goes down. He'll get it, but in the end, that Gangplank is not long for Summoner's Rift. Patrik comes in, the parlay does a little bit of damage. Chachi just trying to distract both Alphari and Patrik for as long as possible. But there he goes. There she blows, as they would say on a pirate ship, as Patrik takes down Chachi.
There she blows. Yep. Okay. I didn't realize you were so familiar with pirate terminology.
Hey, do you know what a pirate's favorite letter is?
Is it R?
It is R.
Savvy was the word I always liked in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Savvy's a great word.
In any case, Splyce going to be trading now after that 3 members were sent up top with the bot tower and the Drake. They're going to be very happy with the objectives overall gain. They're going to be in the gold lead right now, so they're pretty happy. So Origen end up trading what is effectively a kill for a lot more objectives and gold. They're probably not going to be able to secure this tower on the top side, and Alphari needs to be careful of overextension. Of course, he's not going to be able to secure it because the Gangplank ultimate is there as well. So Splyce playing the map a little bit better than Origen right now.
And 50 minutes into the game, they are going to have about 1,200 gold lead. You know, it's a much more sizable sum than they had in the last game, as they were at a deficit at that 15-minute mark, and they're starting to pick up some of these items. You have a Blade of the Ruin King complete on Kobbe. You've got Trinity Force on its way for Chachi. Hexdrinker first on Humanoid in the mid lane to avoid some of that kill threat that you have from the Syndra. Delays his Trinity Force just a tad. But with the game going at the snail's pace it is, I'm pretty sure he'll be up towards that Triforce before we have any of these major fights going
here we go.
down.
This is it. Ultimate. Zanzarah. Can he land it? Can he predict it?
Here we go. He hits it. The Valkyrie still comes out. The chase is up. And Humanoid gonna flash away. The depth charge coming out. It will knock him up. Patrik's the one tanking the tower, though. And Origen botched the dive. Zanzarah did it. He hit the ult. But Patrik tanked the tower.
Both Zanzarah and Mithy used their flash to try and get that kill onto Humanoid. Neither one... I mean, it was a good flash from Humanoid to come out at the last second to dodge out from the hook from Mithy. Unfortunately, Patrik got underneath the tower first, which meant he was the one tanking up. And I think Origen recognized, well, Mithy doesn't have enough damage, Zanzarah doesn't have enough damage, everything is on cooldown, so we kind of need Patrik, and Patrik is tanking the tower, so we can't dive, unfortunately, which means that he walks away with his life. So a lot of summoner spells invested for very little gain there from Origen.
Exactly, Vedius.
Yeah.
Now Alphari will come up to the top lane, clear this out. It's about 10, 15 CS up.
All right.
Counterpart.
Okay.
Have you got something to talk about?
No. Okay, so if we pan over to the bot lane, right, this is actually one of those opportunities where you could look to freeze.
Okay.
Because there's actually very little objectives for you to play around the map.
Okay.
It's one of the situations where you could argue you could afford to lose the top tower because it's low anyway and you can't defend it. So there would have been an opportunity for them to actually freeze on the bot side of the map and invest more farm into Patrik.
I guess with the game going at a Korean pace, it only makes sense that we have a Korean caster on the desk with me. Thank you very much, LS, for that insight.
I'm just saying. I think that there are specific instances where you can set up freezes, and that was one of them. Or he's actually going to trade a tower for it, because the Gangplank is afraid of getting dived, so this is also fine.
Mithy is...
Someone needs to catch that top wave, though.
They do.
Someone really needs to catch that top wave.
Who is going to go
No one's going to...
Nukeduck has CP, Patrik has it
All right, no. Okay, if they dive mid and they force this tower, this is not the end of the world, but they really need to force it. Otherwise, it's just bleeding farm.
So Humanoid has Valkyrie. Xerxe is there as well. There's farm bleeding in the top lane, as you say.
It is.
As a medical professional, I can confirm there is bleeding. And the band-aid that Origen put on it didn't really work out.
It's all gone. Yeah. It all went to the tower.
Exsanguination. Exsanguination.
Exsanguination.
Yeah, it's where you lose, it's losing the blood from our body. You're bleeding out.
Oh.
You exsanguinate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there we are.
That's your word for the day,
Some
everyone.
fun medical facts.
Could have made it up, none of you know. I didn't.
Okay, most of those people probably have access to Google.
Yeah, but now they know because they've Googled it, right?
I see.
Anyway, should we talk about League of Legends videos?
I mean, so we can talk about next steps. Dragon spawns in about a minute. Baron spawns in about a minute and 45. So Dragon will likely be the next big objective worth playing for. So we now have to look at items and debate, okay, which one of these teams will probably be stronger at this point in time? Well, Trinity Force is done for Corki, Trinity Force is done for Gangplank, the Vayne has Blade of the Ruin King, so Splice, they feel pretty good, right? We talk a lot about how they have a lot of damage later on into the game, and they do scale pretty well, and if they can get a good setup around Drake, then they could contest for it. The thing that Origen have to be the most afraid of is that Patrik doesn't really have that much damage right now. Nukeduck is strong, Alphari is strong, but because they lack the AD carry, maybe they'll be hesitant to try and force this Drake, but they've got all the vision set up in order to secure it, so maybe they'll try and force it anyway.
Yeah. And at the moment, they are 3 members strong in the mid lane. Patrik about to join his team, Humanoid and Xerxe. The 2-man squad defending this mid lane tower. It still remains. It's taking about a third of its health in damage. Sjokz down towards the bottom lane. Going to catch that wave as it pushes in. He has an Executioner's calling as alongside the Trinity Force to try and get some of that healing reduction if you match up into the Aatrox. And it looks like Origen are going to set up around the Dragon. It is a mountain.
It's an important one.
Very important going to get.
All right, so you can see Nukeduck can use his wave clear to help gain some push on the mid wave. Splice forced to play around the backside. Patrik is actually the one sent down to bot. Alphari's CP is just about to come up, so Origen, they will concede pressure in the river, or control in the river, to try and trade this top tower. And again, remember we said that Patrik doesn't actually have completed items yet, so maybe they don't want to force this fight. And it looks like right now, Origen don't feel super confident forcing this. Oh, here comes the teleport.
Teleport comes in. Patrik trying to dive onto Vizicsacsi on the backline. Xerxe in the back of the pit. Zanzarah's going to land at the Glacial Prison. It's all onto Humanoid as he jumps away. The Dragon's still aggro, down to about 1,000 HP. Now Origen are going to try and steal it away. Oh, the smite was a little bit too early, but Mithy's still able to secure it. And now Vizicsacsi is in the wrong side of the map. He has to flash across the wall here, but here comes Splyce onto the backline. Sjokz doesn't go away. Zanzarah's fallen. Alphari goes down as well. Mithy the third to follow. Norskeren with a great play lands it onto Patrik, and that's 4 in the back pockets of Splice.
And Origen funneled themselves into the Dragon pit, allowing the rest of Splice to get this collapse down. What looked like a terrible flash from Vizicsacsi was actually just a bait all along. The Baron is alive, and there are no teleports available on Origen. They are just going to start this one off, and with a Vayne, they should be able to just melt through this one.
But you don't need the Mountain Drake if you can just take the Baron straight away afterwards. Nukeduck has the flash, has a lot of damage on this Syndra. Ludens and a needlessly large rod, but he's got to do something absolutely miraculous here if he's going to steal this one away. Humanoid jumps across the pit, and Nukeduck is forced away from the fray. Splice will get the Baron 21 minutes in.
I mean, good response there from Splice, and honestly, it felt like Origen got baited into that fight a little too hard. We talked a lot about should they bother trying to force this fight, is it worth it? And in the end, it ends up not being it. Sure, the Mandrake is important. They look to try and contest it. And initially, this looks good because Splice is split up. Vayne is still in the mid lane. Vizicsacsi gets zoned off from the fight. And all Origen need to do here is take the Drake, disengage. But this is where I think it's mad genius from the side of Vizicsacsi. Notice he's put himself in the pit, and you're thinking, oh, Vizicsacsi, you've messed up. We're not going to look at that flash. It's like, where's he going to go? Where's he going to escape to? But he baits all these people inside the pit. Then the collapse comes through from Splice, and now they've overextended, and Kobbe and Humanoid have easy access to the backline.
That's a man that's been to a gauntlet before. He knows what works in these scenarios. Baron up for Splice. They have a couple of minutes to use it. Mithy flashes forward, doesn't land the dredge line. Meanwhile, 3 members of Splice are pushing in the mid lane here. That tower's going to fall pretty rapidly, and Kobbe is down towards the bottom side. He's prepping a wave if they want to go for that tier 2.
So Kobbe now split pushing, with the Vayne, level 13. Patrik doesn't have the teleport, Nukeduck doesn't have the teleport, so they won't be able to match them on the side right now, especially with these waves. Norskeren providing good peel, and at the very least, Splyce should be able to get a mid-tier 1 here off the back of this play.
Yeah, just chipping away at that tower, the mid-tier 1 will fall, as you say, Vedius, and a 5,000 gold lead or so now for Splyce, as their scaling proponents continue to get stronger and stronger. We've got Ginsu's Rage Blade now finished on Kobbe. Remember, he is undefeated on the Vayne in LEC history, and we see some of the reasoning behind that so far this game. We'll see if we can continue that into team fights, as Origen now will be looking for a full-on fray, but Splyce continue just to pull them around the map. With Humanoid still having teleport, he could join a fight if it started, so he can be left in a side lane, and the rest of Splyce are in that mid lane looking to push forward with the wave.
So Origen just kind of getting split up right now, slowly running out of options as their base is slowly starting to fall. Fortunately for them, the Baron was taken so early that the base has not been cracked, which means the Origen still hold on to their inhibitors, but they're going to lose a lot more map control. Splyce will have easy access into the river, Splyce will have easier access in terms of setting up enemy vision. You can see that Zanzarah now has to spend his time clearing out his own side of the map before he even has an opportunity to get into the river. Now the Drake is going to be spawning in a minute and a half. This will be the next primary objective that Splyce want to get their hands on. They still have a minute left on the Baron, but I'd be surprised if they actually use this to really convert into another objective. Instead, they'll likely prioritize on trying to get enemy, prioritize on getting vision inside the enemy jungle.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You know that that Mountain Dragon is a key proponent to a winning strategy in this game. Of course, damage to objectives and to monsters. So it makes it a lot easier for you to take that next Baron that can really help you open up the base of Splyce. Let's have a look at some of the gold earned so far this game. As you can see, Humanoid and Kobbe topping the charts. Mithy, right at the bottom. Not too surprising, but I'm always surprised by like how big the difference is between a support and the person who is the richest in the game. It's a difficult life. It's a difficult life being a support.
Okay, so they're actually able to set up for this, but OG want to fight.
Zanzarah has the... Oh, it's going to pop it straight up to Humanoid, and Patrik's going to jump in. Humanoid flashes away. Meanwhile, down towards the bottom side, Norskeren is stunned up, but the hook comes out, and that means Nukeduck's caught. Kobbe coming in from the side. He's looking for the fight. Is it Vayne spotting, or is it Genius from Kobbe? Alphari falls, and Kobbe is on the chase. Looking for Zanzarah and Mithy on the back line as they try to get away, but Mithy takes a chunk. Patrik coming forward, the dodge away from the dredge line. And now Nukeduck's forced down towards the bottom side of the map.
So this was a situation where Origen saw Humanoid out of position. They could have had a good engage, but because of the quick flash from Humanoid, they could not capitalize on the back of it. Then again, Origen tried to overcommit to the fight, which meant that Splyce were able to turn and counter Alphari, who was slightly out of position. Kobbe ends up finding a kill, I believe, and Splyce actually converted into 2 additional towers with the Baron already gone. Now they're 2 on... Ooh, Norskeren.
Flash in, the Stalker's Blade coming out from Zanzarah, looking for the slow here on Norskeren, but Norskeren burns a flash of his own, so it is a summoner for summoner trade. Meanwhile, Xerxe and Sjokz just taking away the Mountain Drake.
Splyce are getting everything here. OG focus on trying to find another kill rather than trying to contest this Drake. Now, of course, they will be able to convert this into the mid-tier 1, maybe even a mid-tier 2, but with Corki resetting already, he should be able to get back out onto the map and wave clear. So Origen getting heavily punished there. So we'll get to jump into this replay now. We can see Humanoid gets a little too close to the tower. Once again, another good ultimate coming out from Zanzarah, but then the flash here. At this point, Origen should look to disengage. They don't have enough damage to get the kill onto Norskeren, who lands a great hook onto Nukeduck, and then Vayne comes in from the side. Doesn't actually use the Condemn onto Alphari, doesn't need it in the end, is able to just find that kill, and OG starts splitting up. There's little that they can do, especially with Patrik not having his ultimate. Now Patrik is in more danger.
Humanoid going for the 1v1, but the killer instant comes out from Patrik, and Humanoid just loses this, the shutdown. Mithy Kai'Sa at the end, but the rest of Splyce are on their way. Xerxe and Sjokz coming in. Norskeren and Kobbe join them for the fray. 3v4 in the top lane because Nukeduck's trying to get into this fight, but maybe Origen can push Splyce back. They will distract and dissuade Splyce for the moment.
So a couple summoner spells were used. Flash gone from both Patrik and Mithy. That ends up costing Humanoid his life. This will slow Splyce down a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. They're mainly waiting for Baron to spawn in about 20 seconds. Was it a death that needed to happen? No. But you also see the power of Kai'Sa once she already has these 3 items done. She's really strong, really scary. Even though she's at a level disadvantage, a pretty significant level disadvantage actually. So I'm Humanoid. I'm level 16 on a, what, 2.5 item Corki. I'm like, I can win this. And then I don't even think Mithy was needed. I think he was going to lose.
Patrik had won.
That's ridiculous. Patrik was 3 levels down.
Patrik did dodge a lot of the missiles and gets the shield from his ultimate. But yes, it is ridiculous, Vedius. I totally agree. That's why you should play Nocturne mid. Patrik would have never survived.
Oh man, that's crazy. Kai'Sa, ladies and gentlemen, super strong. Just at 3 items as well.
Xerxe stunned up. Patrik going to jump in once again. But Xerxe is able to flash away. The cannon barrage comes out.
Yeah, ulti to buy time. Here we go.
Buys time and slows up Patrik. Cannon box coming in here by Splice. Humanoid on the chase. Counter TP used by Origen.
Everyone's running down bot lane.
In NA, you might have all-rounder more mid. Here we have all-rounder more bot, it seems, as they go for...
Don't do it. Don't do it, Mithy.
He could have done it, though.
And that would have been a bad decision.
Just saying he could do it.
He could. He should not. Now, Baron spawn is up. And Splice are going for it. So, who has TP? Patrik does. He's up and ready. Humanoid going to steal away the red buff. Here we go. Can OG steal this one away?
TP used by Patrik. Scatter the weak from Nukeduck will catch out Xerxe in. He has to eat the oranges. It's K for the moment, but maybe Nukeduck will look for another stun as Splice get forced away from the Baron. Patrik getting mid lane priority, and look at where Origen are compared to Splice. Splice have to go the long way round. Origen will have some time to free hit on this mid tier 2.
But Humanoid should be in a position to wave clear. So not much is going to happen off the bat. That bot is pushing in favor of Origen, top is pushing in favor of Splice. Someone should go and answer that top wave so they can generate an element of pressure. Nukeduck does have TP, so I would consider sending him, but of course he also has a lot more wave clear, so maybe they just want to hold him mid. He has to be super careful in the mid lane. But also, notice how, even though Splice have such a massive gold lead, how actually difficult it is for them to force a fight. They need to land a Thresh hook, or they need Gragas to find some good ulti, but it's really difficult against this comp. So I think this actually gives a lot of freedom for Origen to sit back and scale. And we can see that if Splice don't have the proper setup around an objective like Baron, and Origen has the freedom to just walk up, Origen will probably take that fight, especially given that Kai'Sa is like really strong now. Again, she doesn't have the levels, but she is really, really strong. So as long as that crucial crowd control does land, OG is in a good spot. So even though the gold difference is 7k, I feel like that Origen are not quite as far behind as the gold would suggest.
I agree with that. I think Nukeduck being 40 CS behind Humanoid, and starting to see Hex Drinkers and Phantom Dancers and some of these shieldings and Azonias coming out on the side of Splice makes it harder for Nukeduck to find a 1-dig on someone. Like the Unleashed power is going to get blocked by a lot of this shielding. But if, as you say, if Patrik can get some damage down in the fight, then it becomes a lot easier for Origen to win it out. Vision cleared away.
All right, they gotta catch top wave, and they gotta move into the enemy jungle. Vizicsacsi, go catch top, push out the top wave, and then...
Or they could just go for the Baron.
Oh, they're just gonna go for the Baron. OG don't actually have vision on this though, and they do have blue trinket. That's gonna come down. They have information.
Here we go.
They have wards. They have a ward.
Teleport coming in. Zanzarah jumps into the pit, but that Baron's only at 4,000 HP. The Glacial Prism lands from the side, but it's only onto Norskeren. Scatter the weak use. He's down to half. Here comes the package. Humanoid jumping onto the backline. An incredible cast! Separates Origen, scatters them to the winds, and Splice have found 2 quick kills. Kobbe on the chase now as Patrik's going to fall as well. It's a double for Xerxe, and that should be it. Origen just get demolished around the Baron. Splice find the fight they were looking for. Kobbe still trying to chase onto Alphari. Shouldn't be able to catch up with him as Alphari can just continuously dash away.
So this is exactly what Splice wanted to do. They needed to utilize the Baron in order to force a fight, and Zanzarah goes into the pit rather than be there with his team. Without that front line, a great package from Humanoid comes through to just shut Nukeduck down, and now with all 5 members alive, there's very little that Alphari can do to stop the siege from Splice.
Is there some secret rule that I didn't know about? You have to win a fight a Baron, then push through top and take both the Nexus towers? Because it's happened in 2 games in a row now. Splice are going to equalize the series. Mithy can't do anything about it. The Nexus fall, and Splice takes us to 1-on-1.
So, it was one of those situations where it felt like, we talked about it in game 1. Origen took a couple of fights that they didn't need to take, and those fights could have ended in disaster. In game 2, we see a perfect example of Origen taking a fight that they didn't necessarily need to take, and it ends up in them losing a Baron. Again, a lot of props needs to go for Vizicsacsi. His big mind game play, flashing within inside the dragon pit, making it look like, oh no, I am a pirate with a wooden leg. I can't escape. Come chase me, come kill me. And then everyone comes clambering into the pit, and then bang, Splice come in from the flank, the Vayne, the Corki, the backline gets melted. Very easy from the side of Splyce. They needed to utilize the objectives. And again, like, I think it was fine. You know, they didn't take any rash decisions. I think their Baron setup could have been a little bit better. But aside from that, they did utilize the Baron well in order to force fights, which is ultimately what they needed to happen, and it ended up happening. So now we're 1-on-1. We're guaranteed at least 2 more games. Both these teams demonstrating that they are still very close. And I think that, weirdly enough, whoever gets that 1K, 2K early game goal lead seems to be able to hold it for the rest of the game.
That seems to be the case. We'll see if the analysts agree with you as we're going to hand it over to the analyst as for our post-match.
Thank you very much. I mean, I do agree with you. Generally, if you get a lead in the early game, you're doing pretty well later on, but you know, that could just be me. Also, snack game on point from Splyce. I mean, they're getting their nutrients in. That whole table was full of healthy and diversified snacks. It's important.
Yeah, just eat your bananas and you win games.
Exactly. Great job from Splyce. They equalized the series. Yamato, as we take a look at these team compositions, you said when we got into game 2, you wanted to see more agency on Kobbe, on that star player, and that's exactly what they did with the Vayne.
I was very worried with the lane matchup, but Xerxe spent all of his time not doing anything proactive. He was just pretty much defending bottom lane matchup because they were laning Vayne, Thresh into Nautilus Kai'Sa that can get very dangerous. They got themselves through the early game while Vizicsacsi still racked up those isolated deaths, but this one was very different because he got absolutely no help and some of those deaths had to happen. The fact that he came out of that early game not being super far behind is absolutely crazy. So Splyce, change it up, play for bottom, I like it.
Yeah, even though they kind of sacked the bottom lane and then had to protect it, do you feel like this is more in line with what you want to be seeing out of Splyce?
For sure. We got the late game, we have 2 AD carries, we have a Gangplank, you know, the random Zoman value is going to be crazy, but who cares?
Yeah. What do we make of OG's draft in this one? Nukeduck with the Syndra in the mid lane?
Well, I personally like the Syndra in a matchup like this, where you can like sort of outrange the Corki with your Qs, and then you have a lot of kill threat around that middle lane, especially if you bring the Sejuani into the picture as well. And with a relatively squishy lineup that Splyce is bringing to the table, I think that Syndra, if she can get down her orbs and then one-shot the Gragas in the front line, it's pretty hard to go into the team fights. But there was some clutch itemization, I think, coming out of Humanoid to shut that down.
Yeah, I loved it. We had the Mercury Xerxe.
I mean, Mercs and Hexdrinker on Corki before going rapid fire is like pretty defensive build, but it ended up being genius because Kai'Sa decided to go the AP build. And
so it was genius in the end.
It was good, yeah.
I think there were a lot of big brain plays that weren't obvious to the naked eye, and that's how I want to go into this next dragon fight, because we were worried about Splyce and notably Vizicsacsi not going in the dragon pit, but it was all planned, Ender.
Yeah, well, it starts off with OG Patrik jumping in to force Vizicsacsi away and also chunk him out to below 50% HP. And at this point, you think, okay, Splyce probably out of this one. Corki had to use the package to get away. Xerxe goes over the wall. Maybe they go for a dragon steal. When that doesn't happen, you're like, wait a second, Chachi's going back in while the rest of his team is running towards mid lane, but he's the biggest galaxy brain I've ever seen because all of OG like basically funnels themselves into the Drake pit while the rest of Splyce can collapse and kill them.
Something I want to highlight here though is that Nukeduck allowed himself to get cut off. He had the perfect positions to zone 3 Splyce members, but he got cut off because he walked towards his own mid lane turret. If he walked towards his own team, there's no way you're passing a Syndra. So Nukeduck, I feel like he blundered his position at the big time.
Yeah, and I also think this was the perfect timing for Splyce to take a fight. It was a Triforce Corki spike. Vayne got an item, and Gragas on 2 items is also very strong. Like Magic Pen boots plus the jungle item is enough to be very OP.
Yeah, it was super crazy from Chachi because he knows I don't need that mountain dragon because we're just gonna burn the Baron anyway after we kill them all, Ender. So good from Splyce and good that they got themselves back in the game, and also a great game from Kobbe. He's a guy we keep bringing up, but it was also on him to carry, even though I feel like the entire team stepped up heavily in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kobbe performed really, really well in this game, 3-0-6 on the KDA, but also just when you have the Vayne versus a pretty beefy frontline with a lot of HP, you have a lot of agency to play out within these team fights. And then it seems like he was always sort of, I remember this fight around the enemy blue buff where he's like all inside of OG's business and using that mobility and the invisibility to really not give the enemy team a chance.
Yeah, I really think Splyce needs to keep drafting for the late game. Like, this works for them. Xerxe did a really nice job securing the early game and mid game for them. And if they keep drafting like this, they have a good shot at taking the series.
I felt also we saw something very new from Origen. Most of the time I see Alphari being left alone on an island, but instead 2 games relatively they're playing around him. Maybe this is not the OG success recipe that we like to see. Maybe they need to play around Nukeduck once again and give Mithy advocacy as in the first game, because when Nukeduck and Mithy don't get that good transition into mid-late game, all of a sudden we don't get that OG that is that good.
And I don't want to forget Zanzarah this game. He snowballed top lane pretty well for Alphari, and yeah, as you said, we usually don't see this from Origen, that they snowball top, and Alphari just has to take the lead and win the game with it.
Yeah, we can theorocraft a little bit in here because we said beforehand Zanzarah will maybe make different decisions than Cold, but then in the mid game you can't probably, we don't know, we're not in a game, but rely on him in the same manner as you would on Cold in terms of that decision-making in the mid-game. What would you say is the verdict on Zanzarah and OG so far?
I think Zanzarah's been relatively quiet, because you look at game 1, he wasn't really pressured that much, even in a losing jungle matchup, so he didn't have to do a ton. In this game, again, I think he was in the right places. I personally really like playing around Alphari. If we look at this entire team, he by far had the best split out of anyone on Origen and was often doing very well in his lane matchups, so I do like that decision-making. Now for me, what I want to see from Zanzarah, I'd love to see him on something super comfort like the Ornn or the Nunu and let him come into his own here, because otherwise it's just going to be very standard gameplay out of the Origen jungler.
We're gonna look forward as we look at some highlights of the jungler. Origen chose red for the next game because the loser gets side selection in these best of 5s. What are the choices we're looking at and the changes from both sides without, I think, throwing everything overboard, because you're at a 1-on-1, Yamato?
Honestly, if I look at these 2 drafts, if I don't look at the teams that are playing it, I would say that Origen have by far the better draft. But just because we have 2 teams with very specific identities. We have the Splyce, we wanted to play around Kobbe, play for the late game. With Origen, I wanted to play around Nukeduck, play around Mithy, and give them a position where they can take charge of the game. With that said, I just want them to make sure that Nukeduck has a split pusher. That's what he does well. Leave Alphari on an island. He's perfect on that, and just play to your strengths, because that's what you need to do in a best of 5 like this.
Gilius, anything to add?
I have 2 game plans for both teams. Like Origen has to match the late game drafts from Splyce, because they are actually better in the late game than them. In game 1, they had the better late game draft, 5v5, and they won. And Splyce just has to step it up in the early game. Like, just keep this up. Like, Xerxe did a good job at defending this game. Sometimes he didn't defend Sjokz too well, but he tried. And yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for that insight. Splyce and Origen, they've been to Worlds before, but tonight only one of them can keep the dream of a return alive. Game 3 is up next. Don't miss it.
No cannon barrage, as here comes Zanzarah. Vizicsacsi is going to be caught out. Pops the oranges a little bit too early, and that's first blood once again for Origen. He has to flash across the wall here, but here comes Splyce onto the backline. Sjokz doesn't go away. Zanzarah's fallen. Alphari goes down as well. Mithy the third to follow, and that means Nukeduck's caught. Kobbe coming in from the side. He's looking for the fight. Is it Vayne spotting, or is it Genius from Kobbe? Alphari falls, and Kobbe is on the chase. Humanoid jumping onto the backline. An incredible cast separates Origen, scatters them to the winds. And Splyce have found 2 quick kills. Kobbe on the chase now, as Patrik's going to fall as well. It's a double for Sjokz, and that should be it. Origen just get demolished.
great chance against me. I can calculate 90 trillion moves in advance. Not fair. Not fair.
Red Bull gives you wings.